Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Okay, a couple quick updates on the Danny Masterson appeal. Guys, they have requested and been granted their 5th request for extension. It's absolutely unbelievable. That's not the only update. So the one update is that, by the way, this is the request for an extension to simply file an appeal. Simply file an appeal. Let me show you. The first request here, this is the docket for the appellate case. The first request occurred just about 6 weeks after Danny was convicted. That is how soon this appeal was supposed to be filed. They were already requesting an extension of time. So they filed their notice of appeal on September 18th. And then on November 3rd, last year, they were already requesting an extension. So that's the first request in November of last year. Then in March of this year, there was another request. Then in September, there was another request. Then October, and then just today. I mean, it was so recent. The request, the extension was requested yesterday, and just earlier this evening, I actually called the appellate courthouse and asked the clerk of the court. I said, tonight is the very, very last night for Danny Masterson to file his appeal. And if he doesn't file his appeal, if he doesn't file his appeal by midnight tonight, it's done. The whole thing's over. And the extension was requested yesterday, but the judge hasn't ruled on it. Does the judge have to rule on it? And what's the absolute latest time today that the judge could make a decision on this? And the clerk said, actually, the judge just ruled on it, and I just haven't processed it in the system yet. So she said, I'm going to do that right now. She processed it. Then the document was available, but you can't buy these things online. You actually have to call the courthouse, and you have to get the info. Then you have to email saying you want the document. Then they process the request. Then you have to call back with a credit card. You can't even do it on a website. It's actually kind of crazy. So now that the request for extension has been granted, the actual request itself is available, and I'm going to share that with you because it's interesting to me that over a year after Danny Masterson was convicted, the request for extension is simply due to, gosh, I sure am really busy. So I'm going to show you that. Before I share that with you, I will also share that earlier this week, the big news on the Danny Masterson appeal was that Danny Masterson's attorneys and their investigators were in very hot water with Judge Almeida for sending investigators to jurors' homes, uninvited, unannounced, unwelcome, to question them about, it turns out what they're trying to get into is they're trying to dig up evidence of unethical behavior amongst the jurors themselves, juror misconduct, which is wild. And so the judge had indicated a desire to explore the possibility of sanctions against those attorneys. That was very interesting. We're going to get a status conference on that in a couple weeks, followed by an evidentiary hearing and hopefully sanctions. It would just make my heart so warm to see that happen. So that's the update. That's the update on something actually being scheduled. And here's the update on something being postponed. Here's the actual request from Cliff Gardner. Cliff Gardner, by the way, is the attorney presently, the appeal attorney for the Menendez brothers. And what I found interesting is that of all the things that Cliff Gardner says he's been so busy with the last 30 days, he doesn't even mention the Menendez brothers. So let's see what he does say. In the last 30 days, I have filed 1, a petition for review in People versus Espinoza in the California Supreme Court. 2, an appellant's opening brief in People versus Moffitt in the California Court of Appeal, First Appellate District, Division 4. 3, a petition for review in People versus Hamzy in the California Supreme Court. 4, an appellant's opening brief in People versus Perez in the California Court of Appeal, Fourth Appellate District, Division 2. And 5, a petition for review in People versus Lopez in the California Supreme Court. In addition, I prepared for and presented oral argument in People versus Mercado. Okay. I don't think any of those is the Menendez case. Anyway, he goes, nevertheless, I've completed drafting the opening brief for the Danny Masterson appeal. I'm currently in the proofreading and editing process. I anticipate filing within the time requested. And then he requests the extension, and it was granted. Okay, fine. Pretty much business as usual. What I find interesting is that when the unethical, possibly illegal behavior of Danny Masterson's appellate's team's investigators came up as an issue with Judge Almeida, it was Cliff Gardner who kind of distanced himself from this case a little bit. It's like, oh, it's all Eric Molthop. Eric Molthop's the one taking care of business right now. I did my piece. He's doing his piece. And to me, his explanation seemed to be a little different than it doesn't actually comport with what is in this request for an extension. I am hoping to get my hands on the actual affidavit that Cliff Gardner submitted to the judge in the issue of jurors being harassed, and compare what he says in that affidavit to this request for an extension, where he makes it sound like he's the one actually still presently doing all the work. Wouldn't it be interesting if he was telling the appellate judge one thing and using that as an excuse for requesting yet another delay, but telling Judge Almeida a completely different thing in order to avoid getting sucked into sanctions and God knows what else in the juror harassment issue? Stay tuned for that, guys. Hope to have that on Monday or Tuesday. That really is it. This is just a real short and sweet one. But yeah, let's see. We got some starred comments here and we'll wrap this one up. Paula Candeloro, you think maybe they're trying to wait out the attention the case got to maybe get a better deal if people forget. Never let the people forget, Aaron. Well, I certainly won't. I don't personally think that is the strategy here. The chance of this appeal being granted is so low that I'm just not sure that this is really factoring into the strategy, but who knows? Anything is possible. Thank you, Paula. Constance June, are 5 extension requests normal? My understanding is that most of the previous requests were actually not just saying that they weren't prepared, but that there were actual documents and transcripts that they were trying to get from the court that for whatever reason was held up. So not all of the extensions were the fault of the defense attorneys, although it still fell perfectly into the strategy of the defense attorneys. Because remember, Danny Masterson's defense team and Scientology's defense team, their teams and their strategies are very much aligned. Remember, guys, Danny Masterson and David Miscavige are co-defendants in the civil litigation about the harassment and the intimidation and the fair game that Danny Masterson's victims were subjected to since coming forward. And Danny Masterson's previous attorneys, Thomas Messer and Sharon Applebaum, were also fined for improperly and illegally sharing discovery material with Scientology's attorneys. So their strategy really is delay, 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 delay. And it was just kind of a happy little accident that the first few delays were actually because of what was going on the court's side of things. Tanya says, first time actually making a live, always replay crew. Wow, Tanya, after all these years, after all these live streams, I'm excited that you are making your first live. Thank you for being here, and thank you for leaving a comment. Pink Skies, they're looking for any reason to appeal on, it sounds like. Yeah, I agree with that. Mark Freeman, some people go to jail for ridiculous shit and end up being essentially slaves in a for-profit system. This POS gets an appeal. It's so disgusting. Now, this is all just so that he can request an appeal. They haven't even formally requested the appeal, and it certainly hasn't been granted. And I don't expect that it will be granted. But I definitely get your point. And Menendez don't want to be associated with Diddy. Yeah, that's true. Lisa Raphael, Mark Garagos is the Menendez brothers' lawyer currently. They might have different lawyers for different parts of the whole thing. So if you just Google Menendez brothers attorney, Cliff, what's his last name? I just totally, Cliff Gardner is not the first Google result that you're going to get. But if you Google Cliff Gardner Menendez brothers, it will explain his involvement in their appeal process. Cliff Gardner is the one, to the best of my understanding, that introduced new evidence and got the DA to announce that he's going to re-sentence the Menendez brothers. But then that DA just lost his election, and so a new DA is taken over. And so who knows what's going to happen there. But thank you, Lisa. And Susie Q says the legal system is so frustrating. Yes, it is. All right, guys, short and sweet. That's all we got. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe